The Drum Candy podcast is brought to you by Drum Factory Direct.
What's up, everyone? Welcome into episode 3 of season 2 of the Drum Candy podcast. This is your host, Mike Dawson, coming to you from Drum Factory Direct in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. This week, I am sitting down with one of my favorite drummers and people on the planet, the great Todd Sucherman. We start out having a laugh about technology and how it feels to be back on the road, and then we deep dive into some gear talk. Todd has one of the coolest drum rooms I've ever seen. Never seen in person yet, but go check out some of his views of him in the studio. It's just like it's a literal candy store for drummers with drums everywhere and kits mic'd up. So this is a fun one. We talk about all sorts of stuff. So let's get into it. The great Todd Sucherman. So everybody asks me what happens before you hit record, and what happened, Todd? What just happened before we hit record?
Well, before we hit record, every time I come out to my studio, there's some new jack in the box. What's not going to work, right? What something to, and my engineer, JR Taylor, I love him. Like, he helps me. And like, I came out here and I had unplugged. The first thing was I unplugged my microphone. And I'm like, I did that a couple days ago. Wait, I have no audio. So there's that. There's one thing on top of another. Then your voice is it's going through. I got to wear in-ear monitors, and it's really loud, and there's no volume control. There is somewhere in the International Space Station that is my recording studio that I couldn't run. If you said, "Hey, Todd, can you record a single snare drum hit for me in a Pro Tools session for $1 million?" I would say, "Nope, can't do it. Can't do it. My loss. I can record it on here on a phone. Will that if I go?" But no, none of that. If I can't run any of that stuff.
So how happy are you to be back on the road?
Can you tell? Well, yeah, I'm thrilled and elated. It's also freaky as hell, to be honest with you, because
Really?
Boy, if I wasn't a sort of bit of a germaphobe before all of this the last 2 years, I have to say we've just completed 52 shows since June 16th, 100% healthy band and crew, and we have very strict protocols in place and regimens. And, we're largely sequestered from hotel to a dead backstage. No guests, no friends, no like, hey, I got a buddy that lives in this town. No day lunch visits. It's a bummer, but it's a necessity to be able to get through this safely and, well, just to be able to get through it, period.
Mm-hmm.
But it's been great to obviously reconnect with the band and crew, their family. It's been 25 years for me, and we've had largely a lot of the same crew for decades. So yeah, it's been great. And I have to tell you, I think this is the first time I've powered up Zoom in probably since May. So that's kind of amazing.
And you were, I'm sure, just living on that before that. Unfortunately.
Oh yes. as so many of us were, it was a necessity, obviously, and I'm grateful and thankful for technology like that, because I was able to teach. I was able to do some master classes, and actually, that's how we did Crash to the Crown, the Styx record that came out in June. The June previously of 2020, they were trying to get me to go to Nashville and record the record, which I was supposed to do in April. And then obviously the world shut down in March of 2020. So I discovered a program called Audio Movers Listen To, where my engineer or any engineer anywhere in the world can drive my rig from their home safely, like a screen share. And then the participants get an invite link that is full high resolution audio. So Tommy and Willa Vankovich, Tommy Shaw and Willa Vankovich, who are pretty much producing the record, could be in their studios listening. And then we got on a Zoom call. And if someone said, how about a different fill going into the second chorus? JR, punch me in, boom. And we did it that way. We did 17 songs in 3 days. So, technology that exists like this now, it pretty much put me back in business during the pandemic. So I'm really grateful and thankful for it.
That's wild. So how did that recording experience compare to what you've done with the band in the past?
I was home for one,
right,
which was nice. It was one of those things where doing that record was the first time that I used audio movers. I've used it hundreds of times since, but I kept waiting for the big issue, the big crash, something, that would take hours to fix or figure out. And it never happened. It's worked flawlessly every time. So the thing that was, it's always nice being in a big gazillion-dollar studio complex. It's always fun and exciting, but it's also fun to be here because all my stuff is here. If for some reason a snare drum wasn't working with the track, well, there's others to choose from. All my cymbals, all my percussion, everything's right here. All of a sudden someone gets an idea and, it's right here. So that was nice. I mean, you obviously miss the human connection of being in the same room or listening back on the bigs, in a studio. But it was a very easy, breezy, happy experience to do it this way from home.
How was that first show back? I mean, you hadn't seen the kit or anything, right? I mean, did you do any rehearsals? I mean, what was the?
Oh yeah, yeah. Because we had, we basically play about 100 shows a year, and for a band that plays that much, and it's peppered throughout the calendar. So it's not like we tour from, May to September and then I don't see everyone until next year. There's shows all through the year. So that keeps us a well-oiled and lubricated machine with a lot of moving parts. When you take that much time off after working like that, it's basically like taking 6 or 7 years off. It's like that time, it gets accelerated. So it definitely took a couple weeks for us to sort of get our sea legs back, so to speak. But we went to, our first show was in St. Augustine, Florida. And so we went to St. Augustine and we had, I think, 3 days of rehearsals before we started. So we worked pretty hard. And then when the crew was working, we'd be back in the dressing room. We have a little rig back there with little mini amps and stuff that we can work on material. But it was it was exciting, and it was also a little bit of butterflies because it was a little shaky getting back. So it was sort of all hands on deck, mentally and physically. What do I do here? That second nature feeling was not really there. We really had to think about it. So I couldn't get caught up in emotional feelings or teariness because there was a job to do, and it required all of our collective full concentration. The one thing I did notice the first few shows, it was apparent to me that the audience, it was, for many of them, their first time out in a crowd, in 16 months or whatever it was. So you'd see like families of four kind of huddled a little closer together. Everyone was be like, yeah, I want to be out. And then when you get out there, like, well, they sort of forgot how to be in a crowd. But that didn't last long until things seemed to morph into a sense of normality. But those first couple shows, you'd see families huddled a little closer together, and it took them just a little longer to kind of loosen up because they were freaked out about being in a crowd. I was freaked out the first time I was around a bunch of people. I remember standing up going to vote in a line for 3 hours, and like the dude behind me was like, "Come on, man! Like everyone's doing the thing here. Do you want to be where I am? Is that So anyway,
how'd your hands hold up? Were they soft and weak? Or how are you feeling?
I tell you, Mike, I kept really busy out here, thankfully, with doing a lot of records and a lot of projects, and also just trying to keep myself in shape. I'm not one to lie on the couch and go through a bag of cookies by any stretch. I do like to spend a lot of time here. So I kept myself in shape, but it wasn't until the last week that the little voice inside my hand, I guess, said, "Hey, you haven't played through the show. Do you think that would be a good idea?" And I thought, I'm sure it's fine. And then there's like, really? Okay. So I came out here, I played through the show, and it was a breeze. That made me feel good. I freaked myself out for a moment about it. But I came out here and it was totally fine, and I was ready to go.
Sweet. All right. You are in the drummer's dream house there. I think you might have been one of the first people I remember making a dedicated drum room early on. Is that the same one from years ago, or is this a different one?
No, I had one when I lived in Los Angeles that was a little smaller than this. So it's going to be 16 years in December that I've been here. So this is a 22 by 22 structure that was built in the back of the backyard. That's basically just a soundproof box. The idea was, first and foremost, have a place to play that I could come out here at any hour and not disturb a soul. So that was the first thing that had to be nailed. And the room actually sounds a lot more live than you'd think, with it being carpeting on the walls, foam on the walls, foam on the ceiling, because there's so many reflective hard surfaces in here all the way around that I just lucked out with sort of how nice it sounds in here. But things happen by necessity. Drummer needs a place to play. Then drummer needs a recording studio. And then drummer needs a film studio. So
I was going to ask about that. How it's evolved.
I've been one of the Drumeo coaches this last year, and that kind of lit a fire under me that I had to get some technology here and an ATEM and GoPros and get a whole little, got a little switcheroo thing going on here, multicams. So I could A, do the Drumeo gig, B, with the pandemic, I could teach or do master classes. And it turned out to be a great resource for doing recording sessions, because if someone gave me a whole album's worth of songs to record or a couple songs, I could load it in and do a little film clip and, sort of ask the artist, like, is this groove cool, whatever, just send them little clips so they could see it and hear it. And it turned out to be a really useful tool in that regard in trying to please clients,
What is your current kit there? Is that a new kit, or is it?
This is a Masterworks that's new as of 2018. That's been sitting on the gold rack that I've had since 2010. So I had a Bubinga Masterworks kit here that was retired in 2018 when I got these. So this is the Studio series, which is a maple gum with black limba. You can kind of see the black limba bass drum there. That's probably the best view. So this has been the main kit that's been here since 2018. Snare drums, swap out cymbals, obviously, and I've used back. If you can see there,
what is that yellow thing?
That's the Cantaloupe Monstrosity. That is a 1978 Premier. It's basically like an octopus, 6 through 16 contra toms, 16, 18 floor toms, 222 Premier snare, full lock-fast hardware, where most of that was at Bentley's Drums in Fresno. Dana has a museum that's invite only in his shop, and he had these in there. And I said, Dana, what's the deal with these? I'd never seen the polychromatic gold in person before, because Keith Moon used that in 74 on the 74 tour. And he said the original owner of that kit bought it the week Keith Moon died, or ordered it the week Keith Moon died as a tribute, and Dana was the second owner. So I didn't know that I'd fall in love. That's out of the normal thing that I would gravitate towards. But Keith Moon and Phil Collins loom large in my life, and I said, Dana, we got to work something out. Would you, could we work something out for those drums? And then I had dinner with Gavin Harrison when he came through town right after that. And he knew a guy named Mike Ellis in England who's like the premier guy. So he found me the 6, 8, 10. And a 12. Yeah. The high time, 6, 8, 10, 12, he found for me in England. So I bought those to have the completed Octopus kit. So it's kind of fun. I've used those a lot for overdubs. I just put 2 omnidirectional mics, and all of a sudden, it's your Phil Collins Abacab sound there. It's incredible.
That's amazing. It's got to just make you smile when you walk in the room, first of all.
Yeah, it's like it goes against the grain about what I normally fall in love with, but they're absolutely gorgeous. They sort of sound terrible. They sound like timbali boxes acoustically, but put a couple microphones out in front of them, and it's Abacab. It's amazing.
So with your main kit there, do you kind of just leave it set up and only use the drums that you need to hit, or do you remove drums? I'm always worried about sympathetic hum and all that kind of stuff.
No, I'm not worried about that at all. I mean, if I'm doing a piece that is just, snare drum, brushes, kick, and hat, I leave everything there. Or if it's a Ringo sounding thing, I mean, I always say, there's a 4-piece drum set in here. Even though we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 toms, there's a 4-piece drum set in here. And I remember posting, I was doing some like smooth jazz session, and I'm like, smooth jazz session today. And someone wrote, with all that? You need all that? And I'm like, well, just because it's here doesn't mean that I have to hit everything on every song. There is a 4-piece drum set in here. I just play. You know what I mean? A guitar has all the notes. Not every song utilizes all the notes. So it's pretty much the same thing, the way I look at it anyway.
That's interesting, because whenever I sit behind a bigger kit, I feel like my vocabulary shifts. Even if I don't hit the 8, for some reason I can't play like Ringo. If I sat behind that kit, I just couldn't play a Ringo beat. I don't know why. Psychologically.
I mean, for me, I look at this, the rack 1, or if I want the 12 sound, I use this and the 16, and the 12 and the 16 are the only drums that are hit because I'm calling on those sounds. I'm not letting the location of the drums or the amount of real estate that is taken up by other things dictate the choices. I still, if I hear ga-da doosh, ga-da da da I'm just going to play the 12 and the 16, even though I got to go here and here for those,
Is that a exact parallel to your live rig?
It is now. I just changed the live rig over where I had 2 bass drums with the 4 toms, 6, 8, 10, 12 in front. But it was a little bit of a reach. It was starting to get a little bit of a reach as I get on in my years here, and my back gets more rickety and creaky. I wanted to move those things up a little bit. So I moved the 6 to the other side of the hi-hats, moved the 8, 10, 12, so there's just 3 in front, and I was able to shift, 3 floor toms and a gong drum and all the cymbals just over a couple inches. And, a couple inches is a huge deal, especially if you're like me and you're cursed with, if something's like 3 millimeters out of place, it drives you crazy until you can stop in between songs and move it where it's supposed to be 3 millimeters over to the left. So 3 inches is like the Grand Canyon.
What is the most crucial piece? Throne height, snare height, hi-hat height? What's the one that would throw you off the most?
Definitely the relationship to the snare drum. So throne height to snare drum, especially because I play mostly traditional grip. I also play this way. I mean, I'm kind of 60-40. And playing traditional grip, I think, requires a relationship with a higher snare drum. So there's more of a parallel line between the arm and the ground. If the snare drum is too low, like a lot of match grip players have, and you try to play traditional grip, now you're hitting something like this. And it could be painful that way. But right here, it's a karate chop. It's like table height. I could have my laptop here. I could write a letter. It's right here, and I can put my hands on it, and my shoulders are down, and I'm relaxed, and I'm sitting up straight. So it's totally comfortable for me. I think for anyone, especially if you're playing traditional grip.
What is that snare?
This one is sort of the latest acquisition. This is a Pearl Stavecraft Macaw, which is an Asian wood stave drum, 6.5 by 14, and it's a 25 millimeter shell. It's really thick. I don't know if you can see this in there at all.
That's a monster.
And it's got this dado lock system, which those are other pieces of wood that are in there to strengthen the staves. So yeah, it's a thick boy there.
So what sound is that giving you?
I think this should be going through the system. Right now it's singing wide open. I could actually. Does this sound okay?
Yeah. It's got a lot of sound.
So yeah, it's got a lot of body. It's got a lot of ring. And yeah, and for a drum that thick, it certainly has some meat and it has some cut to it. There's a nice throat to it as well.
Do you have like a getting to know you period with snares, like a process you go through?
Yeah, I generally spend a few days and I mess around with the tunings. I play to a couple different tracks in here and see how they work within certain pieces of music. So I like to spend some time with each drum, and then I want to learn its best attributes of what it excels at. So when I'm presented with a piece of music, I can sit here and I could look around and go, that one's going to fit really well in this piece of music. So that's what I normally do. Hold on, something has popped up here on my computer, and all my alerts are off.
Oh.
Okay, mail. Goodbye, mail. I just like how mail just comes up like boom and just knocks half your screen away. I don't need that. I'll check you later, email. I don't need you to check me.
True that. Get out of my life. So what is the starting point? Do you usually turn them all? Like if you get 5 new drums in a day, hypothetically, would you tune them all identically to start? I mean, where do you start?
Well, my thing is, in my opinion, which I respect. No, sorry, that's my favorite joke of all time. That's my favorite joke of all time. Now, in my opinion, a Remo Coated Ambassador is the benchmark. I can't tell what a drum can do if it doesn't have one of those heads on it, because to me, it has the most ring, the most sustain, the most highs, mids, and lows possible. It is just it's the benchmark of sound to me. So, just about every drum in here is fitted with a Remo Coated Ambassador. So I would spend some time tuning it up and down, playing around with it. I've never gotten 5 snare drums in one day. That sounds like a fun day. It's a nice little fantasy. But I would play it for a little bit with no hearing protection, just hearing it naturally. And then it's time to put these in and put a microphone on it and see what happens. I'm not really gigging out anymore. I did when I lived in Los Angeles, so I could sort of take things out and play club dates with it. So that was another thing that was nice of getting to know drums. Case in point, out of this might be a dumb story. It might be interesting. A buddy of mine, Peter Miller, is a drummer that lived in Redondo Beach. And I used to play this place called Ponchos in Manhattan Beach. And we were getting into a whole die-cast versus triple flanged debate. And I said, okay, so next weekend when I'm playing Ponchos, I'm going to bring both my 6.5 Black Beauties. One has die-cast, one has triple flange. Let's put it to the Ponchos test. So I played the first set triple flange, second set die-cast. And I met him at the bar. And we both sat down, ordered a drink, looked at each other and said, triple flanged.
No way.
Triple flanged won the day that night in that room. So, you know, it's fun to experiment with different things. Also, I've had the experience where I've had, you know, $7,000 snare drums on a session, and for whatever reason, someone behind the glass isn't happy, and then someone says, "Hey, could you try using the studio's snare drum?" And like this, some like CB700 with a pinstripe with a piece of carpet on there. I'm like, really? And I'd hit that, and all of a sudden, behind the glass, someone's going, "All right," and then play it, and then go in there and listen to it back, and wouldn't you know, that won the day. Because it was Tuesday, because it was that studio with that microphone, with that engineer, that piece of music, that drum won the day. And sometimes something can sound absolutely horrible to your ear, but through a microphone and whatever in the studio, it sounds like $1 million.
So are all those drums tuned slightly differently for each? Like they all have their own happy spot?
I think they all have a definite, a happy spot. That's a good way to put it. I think the better the drum, the bigger the happy spot. There's certain things like, you know, if I want a super fudge brick baseball bat and the birthday cake, you know, like the Donut Milkwood is great at that. I got a couple of 15s, Beyer Steel 15, mahogany Sensitone, Pearl. I have a Stanbridge Purple Heart Pink Ivory that if you tune it down into almost flap territory, you'll need 3 moon gels to take the tone out of it, because that drum has so much tone even at that tuning. But then all of a sudden you listen back through the speakers and you're getting a banana cream pie in the face with that drum. So there's certain things that if I'm trying to evoke a certain vibe, you know, something I got somewhat, well, in the last 2 years, it would be that one. That's like the Stuart Copeland Pearl. That's like a 1976. It's not a Jupiter. A lot of people call it a Jupiter. Jupiter is a different throw, but it's a chrome over brass. And the vent hole is at the bottom. That's how you know it's the Stuart Copeland. And then you throw a die cast on the top like he did, and a triple flanged on the bottom. And lo and behold, that's that's the sound. That's the drum that he used on Zenyatta Mondatta, Ghost of the Machine, Synchronicity, and all those tours. So if I'm trying to evoke something like that, that drum might get the call, you know?
Is there like your home base snare that if you just want to have a drum up for any purpose, I'll start here? I know Matt Chamberlain said it was a nickel over brass Craviotto, and like.
No, I don't, because, you know, certainly anything that's newer in the collection has an advantage at that time period, just because it's new and it's exciting and I want to bring something into the rotation. But, you know, if someone says to me, like a lot of times, like, oh, I want, you know, like a Black Beauty thing, I might pull out the Joyful Noise Bronze Elite, which sometimes is a little bit like a Ludwig on steroids. Same thing, I might pull out the Donut Titanium if someone says John Bonham. That drum sort of screams Bonham to me over some of the Ludwigs that I have. But you know, there's not a dog in this bunch, or it wouldn't be here. I have gotten rid of a couple snare drums that I thought were sort of beige, you know, that didn't really do anything for me. But everything sort of serves a purpose. Another thing is, if I come out here and it's time to practice, and all of a sudden I sit down and I play and I'm not particularly inspired, or all of a sudden my mind starts to wander and my interest starts to wane, I know that, okay, so swap something out. And I might look up and see a drum and go, you know what? I haven't pulled you out in over a year. And I'll pull that drum out and I'll sort of fall in love all over again. And all of a sudden it's inspiring me. It's inspiring ideas out of me that I wasn't playing 3 minutes earlier. That is sort of one of the reasons why I have all these things. I mean, if I were to sort of psychoanalyze myself, I'd go back to being a little kid, and my father was a doctor and he was a drummer, and his practice, his office, was only a couple blocks away from Frank's Drum Shop and Drums Limited. So on Wednesdays and Saturdays, my dad worked half days, and sometimes I'd go down and spend a day, half day in his office, and we'd always go to Drums Limited and Frank's afterwards. And that experience of being a kid and going into this weird David Lynchian elevator with a little old guy with the hat running the elevator, and you go up to whatever the 6th floor, and those doors open, and all of a sudden it was floor to ceiling drums and gongs and chimes and cymbals. You didn't know where to look or where to walk first. And that was very much a magical feeling, like Willy Wonka when they walk in and they see, the gumdrop waterfalls and the chocolate river for the first time. Mm-hmm. And I think I wanted to create that sort of temple, that sort of thing for every time I come out here. Because if I come out here and I'm not inspired, just put a bullet in my head, right? I should come out here like change out a pair of hi-hats, put 2 17-inch crash cymbals up there. And now I'm playing some weird, murky 6/8 thing that I wasn't playing earlier. Change out the ride cymbal. Change out the snare drum. And I have 3 kits in here. The Cantaloupe Monstrosity Premiers, this one, and I have my dad's 4-piece Slingerland with an 18-inch bass drum. So all of a sudden, boom, I can go over there and I can be in jazz world. I can go over here and I can be in stupid, aggressive tom world. And then I could be in serious world over here, so I can come out here and there's always something to be inspired by or something to try. So the drums have their purpose for that reason, as well as tools to document music, to do a job.
Is there a perfect snare drum sound?
I can't say yes to that because perfect for what? What's the music? Your idea of a perfect snare drum sound might be different than mine, and you might hear something different in a piece of music that may or may not work with it. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's like if something's like really earthy and low, you might not pull out, a really brash, like metal piccolo drum. You might want to stick with something that's earthy, wood, a little deeper, 14/7, tune it down, maybe play it with a mallet. You know what I mean? So it's the music will dictate. It'll point me in a direction, and then it's up to me to find a direction where I think this is the right sound, and that now it's a collaborative thing because I'm working with someone else who will have an executive say over it. So I'm also trying to please an artist or a producer or whatever to help bring their vision even further than they imagined it. That's what I like to do. Or all of a sudden, let's try this, and all of a sudden, now they're really excited about it. Mm-hmm. So that's what I try to do, and I don't want something just to be fine or that works. I want us all to be excited about it.
Okay. So what if I said, I need 3 examples of what you think are the perfectly recorded drums in the history of music?
I just thought about this the other day, and it's only because this is in the forefront of my mind. One of the CDs I always used to test out speakers with is Joe Jackson's Big World. And that's Gary Burke on drums, and he's playing a Gretsch kit. I don't know what his snare drum is on that, but I think the drums on that are absolutely beautiful. Speaking of Stuart Copeland, Synchronicity doesn't suck. Mm. That's pretty great. I'm going to think of 10 different things, later on tonight that I could have said here. Boy, perfectly recorded drums. Well, that's sort of two. I mean, to me, the benchmark tom sound was always Steve Smith with Journey. If there's something special about the way, like Escape sounds, that even though that might be sort of vintage now, the aquatic tone of those toms, which are the classic sonorphonic, 9-ply Beechwood toms. Yeah, that's always been my benchmark for tom sound. So yeah, I'll say Escape.
All right, let's shift into building parts for tracks. I think when I think of your drumming, I think it's very deliberate, it's very clean, and there's always some sort of narrative arc to what you play. Is that accurate?
Thanks.
What is your process? Like if you get a track, how much of it is on you versus what might be in a demo?
Well, it's been a long time since I've received a piece of music that has no drums and someone says, do whatever you want. It's been a while for that. And maybe that muscle, I don't want to say is atrophied, but it certainly hasn't been exercised in a while. So normally I'll get a piece of music that has some sort of at least simple programming. That will at least give me a guide of what the composer sort of wants. And if it's a fairly simple song where it's like doom ga, doom doom ga, doom ga, doom doom ga, and I go, well, this works with the song, this works with the bass line, what's there, that will be my starting point. And I'll think about shaping the piece of music. If it's hi-hat, if I'm opening up the hi-hat on the end of 4, every 2 bars, every 4 bars, whatever, or maybe build it up where it's every 4 bars and then to every 2 bars in the chorus, when to go to the ride cymbal, when to let the sunshine in or when to have a couple oceanic drinks of water from the cymbals, keep it dry for a bit. I will consider all of these like you're painting, colors on a palette. I try to have it be as much of a blank slate as possible. The beat of the bass drum and snare drum would be like the blueprints. Everything else is going to be, what sort of faucets would you like? How big a closet? All those things are the ornaments of building a house, so to speak. But you got to have the foundation. So the first thing to figure out is the bass drum and snare drum pattern, how it changes from section to section. Make it build where to decrescendo. Is the bridge going up? Is the bridge going down? And so you have to have an overview of the whole piece of music. Where is it going? What's your roadmap? So as soon as the foundation is built with bass drum and snare drum throughout, then I'll let a little bit of inspiration or time. I might have a piece of music for a couple weeks or a couple months. And over time, certain things are coming into focus. So at that point, my choices would be very deliberate because now I'm painting a picture. Mm-hmm. I'm designing a house, whatever analogy you want to make. I feel I don't have like a gift that Vinnie Colaiuta has where he can just he can just crap Mona Lisas on command all the time. That's an incredible thing to be able to do. But I like to, if I have the time, to sit and consider what the best choices would be for a track. And in that regard, I come very much from a non-improvisational place. There might always be room for some magic to happen, but if I'm playing non-improvisational music, you know what I mean? It's like with rock and roll, with Styx. I have to go out and I have to draw the same picture pretty much every time. If you choose a life in rock, you have to go, and I want to paint this Mona Lisa. I got to do it again. And it might be a little something different, but that was my choice. It's not a jam band. It's not an improvisational band. It's not jazz. I'm not reacting to different solo. You know what I mean? It's a whole different mindset of music with doing this. So if I have a piece of music where someone sends to me to record, I will consider all the choices if I have the time to do so.
Does that happen at the kit or away from the kit? Do you sit and ponder while listening, or is it all while the sticks are moving?
Both. I'll listen in the car. I'll listen while I'm cooking. I'll listen while I'm taking a shower and getting ready to go somewhere. I'll do that. And then now with this rig, I can record myself and then go in and listen to it later and comb through it and go, yep. Nah, you can do something better there. No, that's annoying. You know, I can go through all the choices until I've found something that I think is right for the music. And then hopefully the artist will agree, you know. But that's the process that I've been involved with here for the last couple of years of doing it that way. And I've enjoyed that process.
So at that point, are you already hearing the sounds? You're hearing the snare sound, you're hearing the cymbal sounds. Like, is that decision made soon?
It's sometimes made soon, and then sometimes it'll come into focus later. I might go, you know what? I need a little darker, jazzier ride cymbal for this. Or, ooh, you know what? Let's overdub sizzle cymbal with a mallet there. All of a sudden, if I hear things enough, I mean, at the same time, I don't want to, gild the lily either, but all of a sudden something will go, that would be nice there. Or let's do a snare overdub. Let's use a different snare for the bridge. I sort of like having these ideas come to me over time. And when I have that sort of time, I feel like I've made the right choice. I feel like this is what I want to hear from the piece of music, and it's an idea and a performance that I'd be proud of. So that's the perspective I come from.
Have you ever painted yourself into a corner and been like, oh, I gotta just scratch it and start over?
Yeah, I think sometimes simplicity will win the day. Like when I did my record, I had a learning experience where I'd never sung before. I'd never been the singer. And there's one song in particular, Ad Lib Everything. It was in 6/8, and I thought, ooh, there's a couple spots here for a couple cool drum things. And I did the vocals first, and then when I did the drums and I tried those ideas, it was like I would have looked at myself like this if I was singing. I would have gone,
I know that look.
You okay? All right.
I know that look.
It didn't work. It didn't work. It took from the song. It was like all of a sudden there's a breath and fancy drum fill. Thank you. And now back to the story. It totally wrecked the vibe. And I thought, man, I hope I don't do that all the time. But it turns out that, even with the fortress of years of experience that I've had, that every now and then the drummer's ego still wants to go, yeah, here's a little something, and on that song, it didn't work. It distracted from the story. It distracted from the mood. So I just played a very simple fill that did what it was supposed to. It was a fill, but it wasn't like a, look at me drum moment. It just kept the 6/8 triply rolling into the next line, and therefore it was a cohesive linear chorus of a song without these little explosions of drum coolness breaking up a story.
Wow, that opens up a whole different can of worms. Maybe we can touch on it, because I am really bad about, I will always do the simplest. I'm afraid to take a chance when I'm in the studio. Like, what is the cue that maybe you should step forward here and give us something to push this section or this song somewhere, more drummy.
look, I mean, first off, simple. It's always going to work. Playing ja-da-da, daga-daga crash, or ga-dum-da-da-dum, it's always going to work. And you don't have to cure cancer with every drum fill that you do, That being said, there is some excitement when something just happens, or even if it's a fill that you worked on and now it's the red light's on and you do it. I always think about this one example. Are you hip to the Bill Myers record called Images with Vinnie Colaiuta from 1986?
I am not. I will be, though.
Okay. Check out that record, because whenever I think of courage and going for it, that's the record that sticks out in my mind, because both sides of the record were recorded live with a full orchestra, rhythm section, like Mike Landau and Larry Carlton and Neil Steubenhaus, A-list guys with a full horn section and a full orchestra, live direct to 2-track. So it's being mixed as it's being recorded. And side 1 is like a 20-minute suite, and side 2 is a 20-minute suite. So if you screw up at minute 16, back to the top, everybody, and you've just cost someone thousands of dollars in 1986 money.
Mm-hmm.
And Vinny's playing is so fearless on this. AM/PM Voyager, Prelude, Liftoff, something like that. It's a shuffle, and he does a couple drum breaks in there that are just jaw-dropping and astonishing. And then when you think of the high-pressure situation of everyone in that room live, everyone in the control room live, mixing this direct to digital 2-track, the courage to play the way he did, and he's reading that stuff down. He's got 9 charts with five music stands just full of music, and he's just reading this stuff down, probably with a cigarette hanging out of his mouth. It's astonishing when you listen to that record, thinking of it in those terms. So I'm always inspired by that sort of courageousness. I can't say that I've done that in a situation like that where there's 50 people recording at the same time, but that might prove some inspiration to listen to that record. And next time you just might go for something with a little bit more danger or flair. I don't know.
All right, we're getting towards the end here. I have a nerdy question for you.
Sure.
The Phil, not like this hasn't been an hour of Nerd Fest, but the Phil Collins snare drum sound. What is the key?
Oh boy. Which era? Which record?
Oh, I'm thinking of you had posted, I think it was the piccolo era. You had posted a video or a photo of a piccolo.
Yeah, he used the Noble and Cooley piccolo for a while. Yeah, and I did a little drum thing for a buddy of mine where I had to play Do They Know It's Christmas Time? So I posted that. Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, that was his sound for a little while. That's a great sound. He also used a big deep Noble and Cooley for a while. He used he had a Fibes acrylic drum in the 70s. Like, I also love his drum sound on Selling England by the Pound. That snare drum. His ghost notes are really, really beautiful. There's a beautifully recorded record too, especially for it being 1973. I think that record is a prog masterpiece beginning to end. And Phil was only 23, I think, when he recorded that. So check out Selling England by the Pound if you don't know that one. But yeah, and Phil's sound has also a lot to do with a lot of processing and what goes on with the knobs. I can't profess to know about that stuff, but I know that Jerry Marotta sort of helped usher in that gated sound, because as Jerry tells it, he was working with Hugh Padgham on the gated thing. Then Phil Collins came in and did 2 songs on Peter Gabriel's third record, and then immediately took that sound And because Peter Gabriel would take forever for records, and it's quite possible that Phil Collins sort of beat them to the punch with that sound, so that became known as the Phil Collins sound. And I think Jerry was a little like, wait a second.
We spent 10 years working on that sound.
But yeah, you can't go wrong with a Noble and Cooley snare drum, and that Piccolo snare drum definitely has that. I wish it would rain down. That track, that record. Well, what was that one? Goo-ka, goo-ka, doo-ka, doom. That's got a nice high pitched crack slap to it.
Yep. All right, last question. What was your first snare drum?
My first snare drum that was a real one was a Rogers Power Tone. So I don't know if you can see much of it, but like that, there's the little jazz kit right there. You can see the 12-inch tom. That was my father's Slingerland kit, 1969, same year I was born. And he had a Rogers Power Tone. And around 1980, I got my first Sonar kit, and it had a 6.5, steel snare. And at that time, I didn't think anyone cool was playing Rogers. Rogers was kind of on the way out. And I wanted a Splash and a China more than anything. So stupidly, I traded that Rogers Power Tone in for a China and a Splash. Both of them are broken within a year. And a 10-year-old has no idea the sentimentality of his father's snare drum. So I always regretted that deeply, that I got rid of that drum. I found one around 2002 from Don Bennett when he had his place in Seattle. A mint condition Rogers Power Tone, complete with the Rogers bottom head, the original snare wires, and the chords. And when I put it on that kit, I got to say, there's a little bit of waterworks seeing Rogers Power Tone back where it should be on that drum set. So yeah, that was the first real snare drum that wasn't one of the little kiddie drum sets that I got when I was 3 years old.
Nice. Well, so what should everyone check out? Check out your Drumeo coaches. How's that work?
Well, you have to be a member of Drumeo. So if you subscribe to Drumeo, you have not only all of Rock Drumming Masterclass, which came out a couple years ago, at your disposal, which is 15 hours of me. And then you have the Drumeo coach sessions, which are all archived right now, and we're going to be doing episode 39. So there should be about 52 by the time the year comes to a close. But you have access to thousands and thousands of things and thousands of hours of all sorts of drum-related stuff. You could check out the latest Styx record, Crash of the Crown, my record, Last Flight Home, Todd Sucherman's fried chicken and baked beans. What else I got going on?
You can go to a Styx show, but don't expect to see Todd. He's not going to be anywhere where you can see him.
I'll be in the kitchen cooking up the fried chicken.
All right. Thanks, Todd. That's it for this week. Hope you enjoyed that episode with Todd Sucherman. If you have any requests, please email me, mike@drumfactorydirect.com. Also, drop a review over on iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts. That really helps get this show spreading to all the drummers around the world. Thank you again for listening. Appreciate all the support, and we'll see you next week.